you can make that work better with 5 stems as opposed to a left and right channel,
Right.
then please do that. And, it's a different rate because it's more work, but if I can do that better, then why not do that? My goal, this is what I say to people, my goal is the same as the mixer's goal, which is the same as the artist's goal. And that's to have an awesome song that we can all look back on and be proud of. I'm not here to put my vision on your work,
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I guess my pushback on stem mastering is just, I guess as a mixing engineer, I'm trying to push things into my compressor. And when you have to like break it into stems, it's no longer hitting the compressor altogether in the same way. And that kind of breaks apart my mix, Yes. But I guess 100%. It just depends on what the artist wants and what the,
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing to keep in mind is what the artist wants. And another thing I've found is that certain genres benefit from stem mastering. So primarily the genre, like I do most of my stem mastering in dance music style productions.
I was going to guess.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, exactly. And it really just gives you the control to, I've done a little bit of side chaining here and there, which is not mastering, right?
Right.
Like
by definition, I think it's not
by
mastering.
definition, that is not mastering. But it gives you the control to be able to do that and to adjust things like stereo width and image with EQ and whatnot just a little bit more. And in that sense, it makes a lot more sense, especially when you have often these artists are DJs, and so they're good at mixing. They know frequencies, they know how to place things in a mix, but a lot of them aren't full-time mix engineers. And so I think it makes sense for them to get a song close and then send it off for stem mastering.
Right. I totally hear that. Like, even if you understand like what the spectral thing should be, like maybe they don't understand how to push a compressor the right ways, whatever it is.
Whatever it is, how to cut even more space out for it, or how to use saturation properly, and on what instrument, So
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so let's talk about referencing and how you get things to translate. What's your approach?
Yeah, I recently got these giant headphones. You'll see me wearing the Audi's LCDXs. So I have those and in my room, and I have the Neumann KH310s, and I think it's just luck. I've messed around a lot with the room and the placement of the panels, and I use a little bit of software correction as well, but it just seems to translate. Now I'll always check. I definitely, when I'm done, I'll give it a couple hours, and then I'll go for a walk usually and check it on AirPods. That's usually my first, I think
I just bought them actually, thanks to the Attack and Release show.
Dylan Seals.
Yes, I was like, this makes a lot of sense to me. So I bought the cheapest AirPods, which are quite expensive in Israel,
yes.
and I'm an Android user, but but they've been really helping me. Me.
Yeah, they're great. It's definitely a weird curve on it for a mastering engineer, but
right, it's so lo-fi compared to what you have going on.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting going from the Audis to the AirPods, actually.
Right.
Just the spatial orientation of instruments is just entirely different. But it's such a great reference because, and Dylan Seals on Attack and Release show made this point, what do you think your client is listening to? Probably exactly. AirPods, or at least half the time it's going to be on AirPods or a similar type of headphone, or I'll pull it up on my iPod, and I'll see if it, as the kids say, slaps. But like you can usually you can usually tell by playing it on some of these really basic systems in a general sense if things are EQ'd in a more broad sense well. And if there's room for everything, because if there's not room for everything, it's just going to be a total high-end mess on an iPod.
Right. It's kind of like the modern Auralex, not Auralex. What are those ones called? The little square ones.
Oh yeah.
Oratones. Yeah, it's like the yeah. It's like the modern Oratones.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'm obsessed with listening to my masters. I've been that way since I made music as well, and much to my wife's chagrin, whenever I'm done, I can't help myself. I always go into our living room and I'll put it on our living room speakers. I'll go to the bedroom. I'll put it on the bedroom speakers. And I already know that it's going to sound good, but I want to hear it everywhere, you know?
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll listen to it in the bedroom and the speakers are like pushed up in a corner. And I say, oh man, that low end is, God, that's crazy. But you also have to remember that that's because of the room and the listening environment. You know, that it's sometimes references are good for that, and sometimes references can exaggerate things that aren't there. So, and you know, I know that about the bedroom speakers, you know, so I know to expect a large bass response.
Right.
But that's also, I love that because it's also one of those like testing, it tests my ear, it tests my judgment. And also if there isn't enough bass, maybe it'll sound more normal or something like that. You know, it's just
you have to like
listening.
Make a mental picture of what each of those places or areas sound. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally. In the end, it's just listening as much as you can. I'm at the point where I fully trust my room, but that does not deter me from listening in any possible room or speaker scenario that I can.
Nice. And do you listen to other masters before you get into a song or at any other point?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, my main listening now is on Tidal. I don't know if you know this, but you can search credits, and they have like mastering engineers. So I'll search for, like, you know, we were talking about him earlier, but Ted Jensen. And you can make a whole playlist of all the songs that Ted Jensen has mastered.
Sick.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's amazing. And then you can say, oh, this is his sound. This is kind of the color that he imparts on every master that he does. And that's been such a big learning experience, more so lately than listening to or researching things, you know, watching YouTube videos and things like that, is just listening to what contemporary mastering engineers have done. What's the gold standard?
Yeah.
So that's usually my downtime listening.
He's your guy,
Ted.
Yeah, Ted.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many good mastering engineers right now. All the guys out of Sterling Sound do absolutely unreal work. You could put on any of their work and be blown away constantly.
Nice.
Yeah, and before I get into a song, though, I think you asked that as well. I usually ask my clients for sonic and loudness references. So I'll start the day by listening to something I know, something I'm familiar with, just to get my ears acclimatized to the room again, to the day, to how I'm feeling. You know, every day each day can be different. So you want to really have a routine to get yourself grounded. So I'll do that. I'll warm my ears up. And then I'll put on any sonic material that I might have for a master. So then I have my base point, I have my reference point, I have my goal, or my, you know, a similar thing that the client wants their thing to sound like. And then I'll put on their tracks, their album, and sit and listen. And you just got to listen, and I'll write notes occasionally to what is missing, or maybe not missing is the right word, but what needs to be done to get from point A to point B, or if there's any areas that are that need to be addressed EQ wise that are poking out,
right?
And hopefully those can be addressed before the mix is sent. I always tell my clients, you know, the mastering process doesn't have to start when the mix is done. It can start when the mix is 90% done.
That's awesome.
There's no, and some clients are they don't need that, but in my mind, there's no point in separating these two processes when we live in a day and age where communication can happen so quickly. You're not sending a 2-inch tape reel to me. It's not printed. We can make changes. And if I'm going to be your mastering guy and I'm making these decisions like, ooh, that vocal's a little harsh here, why would I do it when I can just say, you know, I think that this is going to translate a lot better if you address this on your end. And to me, that is as much mastering as me EQing it.
Right. Yeah, and then it'll come out better because you're not adjusting the entire mix.
Exactly, which goes back to my initial point. I'm after the same thing that we all are. You know, we're all after the same thing, which is the best possible product.
Yeah, that you're reminding me of former guest of the show, Carl Bonner from Pennsylvania, who told me he thinks of himself as a problem solver. So if he's doing a mix and he hears something that's maybe missing in the production, or he thinks something is too much in the production, he'll talk to the artist and try to improve that aspect of the production already in the mix session. So it's just like taking the song a little bit further if he can.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. Exactly. Communication is so important in this job. It honestly, in my world, how I operate with my clients, it cannot be understated how important communicating with them. Not only in that sense of helping finalize the mix, but in finding out what they want. Because as I said earlier, ultimately, mastering engineers are just providing a service. And that's why that's not to say that you can't impart your own color on a song, or you don't have your thing that people come to you for, but it's exactly that. They come to you for that sound. They say, I like the sound of this record. I want the sound of Montano Mastering. But that doesn't take away from the fact that we're here to serve the client. I'm not here to tell you how to mix your song. Like I can impart my wisdom in terms of how I think it'll sonically translate better. But I'm not here to change what you're doing,
Yeah, I love it. You're there to help the artists. You're there to guide them and give them advice if they want it and if they need it. But let them do the artistic side of that. Make those decisions.
Exactly. That was better articulated than I put it. Thank you.
I don't know. It was similar. Yeah. I'm just spitting it back. Got to be the host sometimes.
Yes, perfect.
So mastering is notoriously an expensive and gear-heavy field. So what would you say is the minimum amount of gear and acoustics you need to get started doing mastering?
You need a good converter. You need very good speakers. And if you don't have a knowledge of acoustics, you need to get someone in who does have a knowledge of acoustics, who can make your room sound as flat as possible. Those are the only things that you actually truly need. Aside from that, you can use plugins. I say can.
Don't know if you should.
I do some masters all in the box, but I definitely love having the option of outboard gear.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that. What's your approach to hybrid mastering?
I do typically go out of the box. I have in my chain a Manley Verimu, Manley Silverface Massive Passive. So that's one of the old school original massive passives. And I have an HCL Veris EQ, so a parametric EQ. Now, there's so many differences to the analog world and the digital world while remaining very similar. They have plug-in replications, emulations, I should say, of all these pieces of gear. But digital is a little better for maintaining transients. Analog is better for getting that kind of bloom that mastering engineers love talking about. That kind of saturation from the analog world.
How would you define this bloom to a layman who's not a mastering engineer? I mean, I guess I'm assuming it's like the way the transient opens up, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's so one of the things that I love doing is I'll do almost all of my actual EQ work in the box, and I'll just send the gear out through the Manley chain. And both Manleys have a transformer on it, and those transformers really tame the transients in a really lovely way. It just really opens it up really, really nicely. The highs kind of get this lift. The mids get this kind of richer saturation, but you do lose a little bit of transient. Some things that's really, really nice for, like let's say it's a folk mix entirely in the box. That'll sound really, really nice through the chain. If it's an EDM or a hip-hop type track and you really, really want to maintain those transients, I might not even go out of the box. I might just leave it all in and use emulations of the massive passive in the box, just because it maintains the transients more. It's a little cleaner. A little less color is imparted on it. And the way I approach it in terms of hybrid mastering is really, I don't try to separate them as two different entities. It's more of, well, what does this song need to get from point A to point B?
Right.
Do those transients need to be tamed? If so, I'll try going through the box. If that's not what I'm looking for,